Rebellion has its roots in government's indifference and incompetence. Indeed, there is much in pure humanitarian culture, as opposed to rigid scientific training, which encourages absorption in the affairs of mankind, and more or less indifference to the unfathomed abysses of star-strown space that yawn interminably about this terrestrial grain of dust. Vanity is as ill at ease under indifference as tenderness is under a love which it cannot return. Passion must be concealed in a society where cold reserve and indifference are the signs of good breeding. If moderation is a fault, then indifference is a crime. Not the torturer will scare me, nor the body's final fall, nor the barrels of death's rifles, nor the shadows on the wall, nor the night when to the ground the last dim star of pain is hurled, but the blind indifference of a merciless, unfeeling world. I am a man, and nothing that concerns a man do I deem a matter of indifference to me. What people call impartiality may simply mean indifference, and what people call partiality may simply mean mental activity. At the bottom of enmity between strangers lies indifference. I prefer the folly of enthusiasm to the indifference of wisdom. We are born knowing nothing, and with much striving we learn but a little, yet all the while we are bound by laws that hearken to no plea of ignorance, and measure out their rewards and punishments with calm indifference. My indifference to money and my spendthrift ways are disgraceful. You have no idea how reckless I am, how often I practically throw money out of the window. I am always making good resolutions, but the next minute I forget and give the waiter 8 pence. The radical otherness of birds is integral to their beauty and their value. They are always among us but never of us. Their indifference to us ought to serve as a chastening reminder that we're not the measure of all things. I have no consistency, except in politics, and that probably arises from my indifference to the subject altogether. There are those whose own vulgar normality is so apparent and stultifying that they strive to escape it. They affect flamboyant behavior and claim originality according to the fashionable eccentricities of their time. They claim brains or talent or indifference to mores in desperate attempts to deny their own mediocrity. Ignorance is a matter of laziness, indifference, and apathy. I have been frequently accused of deliberately twisting subject matter to my point of view. Above all, I know that life for a photographer cannot be a matter of indifference. Opinion often consists of a kind of criticism, but criticism can come out of love. Perfect behavior is born of complete indifference. Politeness is organized indifference. I'm not very interested in people. I recognize it in myself. There is a basic indifference toward people. Real nobility is based on scorn, courage, and profound indifference. Old age is far more than white hair, wrinkles, the feeling that it is too late and the game finished, that the stage belongs to the rising generations. The true evil is not the weakening of the body, but the indifference of the soul. Nothing is so fatal to religion as indifference. I regard you with an indifference closely bordering on aversion. To be consistently effective, you must put a certain distance between yourself and what happens to you on the golf course. This is not indifference, it's detachment. Our everyday cares, making a living, the crazy rat race of life, often make us forget the value of a good deed. Thus, the goodness that exists within each and every one of us is covered with layer upon layer of indifference and unawareness. In fact, we almost have to be reminded of the fact that goodness is there inside us. Whoever incites anger has a strong insurance against indifference. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The Holocaust illustrates the consequences of prejudice, racism and stereotyping on a society. It forces us to examine the responsibilities of citizenship and confront the powerful ramifications of indifference and inaction. Despair is a narcotic. It lulls the mind into indifference. In Gnosticism, the physical world did not ultimately matter, which meant physical suffering did not matter either. Seeking enlightenment meant cultivating an attitude of detachment, even indifference. Homelessness is the fundamental idea of salvation in Jainism. It means the breaking off of all earthly relations, and therefore, above all, indifference to general impressions and avoidance of all worldly motives, the ceasing to act, to hope, to desire. The absolute yearning of one human body for another particular body and its indifference to substitutes is one of life's major mysteries. Time begins the healing process of wounds cut deeply by oppression. We soothe ourselves with the salve of attempted indifference, accepting the false pattern set up by the horrible restriction of Jim Crow laws. Over the years, Chevron has behaved in a way that reinforces the worst stereotypes about large corporations. It has cynically avoided responsibility for its past and watched in indifference as more people become sick and die because of its failure to deal with its legacy environmental issues. An unread author is an author who is a victim of the worst kind of censorship, indifference, a censorship more effective than the ecclesiastical index. Man does not live by soap alone, and hygiene, or even health, is not much good unless you can take a healthy view of it or, better still, feel a healthy indifference to it. Everything is pathology, except for indifference. To correct a natural indifference I was placed halfway between misery and the sun. Misery kept me from believing that all was well under the sun, and the sun taught me that history wasn't everything. Forgiveness is indifference. Forgiveness is impossible while love lasts. Perhaps misguided moral passion is better than confused indifference. Careless indifference and bodily restlessness in meditation cause negative vibrations. Indifference and neglect often do much more damage than outright dislike. The chief symptom of adolescence is a state of expectation, a tendency towards creative work, and a need for the strengthening of self-confidence. Suddenly, the child becomes very sensitive to the rudeness and humiliations which he had previously suffered with patient indifference. It would be doing me great injustice to think that I have any feeling of indifference to my country. I have more reason than anyone to feel, every day of my life, the value of the blood which flows in my veins, and it is only from prudence that at times I abstain from showing how proud I am of it. The accomplice to the crime of corruption is frequently our own indifference. After the first blush of sin comes its indifference. If the first requisite for writing well about food is a good appetite, the second is to put in your apprenticeship as a feeder when you have enough money to pay the check but not enough to produce indifference of the total. It is very difficult for a writer of my generation, if he is honest, to pretend indifference to the work of Somerset Maugham. He was always so entirely there. Love cannot endure indifference. It needs to be wanted. Like a lamp, it needs to be fed out of the oil of another's heart, or its flame burns low. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.